So in our previous lesson, we actually created this text and extruded it using the ray traced abilities to extrude any kind of shape layer or text layer. And so now we're going to just kind of adjust this just a little bit, and we're going to allow this building to cast a shadow on it. So let's zoom into our text a little bit so that we can adjust. And one thing that we can do that will help this out is that we can add just a little bit of bevel to this shape, because it's not as realistic to have this so crisp here on the edges. So let's go ahead and we'll go to our geometry options, and then we have what we have is a bevel, and so we can tell it what kind of bevel we want. We can have angular, whoa, that's a lot, and we can have concave or convex, but we need to adjust our bevel depth. So let's go ahead and bring that down. We just want just a little bit of bevel, just enough that we can kind of notice that the edges are not so crisp. So right now we have 0.1, that's 0.2, probably 0.1 will work for us. And then one thing that we can also do is we can take this extrusion depth. Look, it looks just like a little bit too deep here. So let's go ahead and maybe bring that down a point. And maybe about like that. So for our example, we have 7 for our extrusion depth. That already looks better. And then we can also adjust our light a little bit. So we have our parallel light, and let's go ahead and change our intensity. Maybe bring that up just a little. See what that looks like. It's actually getting just a little bit too hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another light. So let's go to our layer, new, and we're going to add a light, and this one will be an ambient light. An ambient light just kind of casts its light on everything. So you can see when it's combined with that parallel light that it's just a little bit too intense. So let's go ahead and bring that intensity way down. And we're just going to bring it up just enough to kind of just to light up our text just a little bit. So it looks like maybe about, well, you know what? I'm going to delete that light. I don't really like what it's doing. I think that what we can do is we can go to our text, and we can actually go to our material options, and we can adjust some of these settings down here. So we have the intensity of how it's taking in light, and so we can actually go in and change how it's accepting that light. We can change how it is how shiny that light is. So if we wanted to, if we had an ambient light, we could actually turn it down right here. So we'll take our specular intensity, maybe bring that down a little, and then maybe take our diffuse and bring it up just a little, about like that. So we have 55 for diffuse and about 32 for specular intensity, because it was getting just a little bit too bright on some of these shiny areas. And even though our buildings are a little bit more bright than that, then it's actually, we didn't want it to look just so blown out. And so for our intensity for our light, we can bring that just up a little bit more now that we've adjusted, about like that. So now we're at 231, and I think that looks really good. So let's just back up. All right, great. So now let's go ahead, and we need to create something that will cast a shadow on our text, because remember in our last lesson, we weren't, or our last lessons when we were using the more 2D example, we're not actually able to put this in this scene and have it be behind this building. So we'll go ahead and create a shape that will do what we want it to. So let's grab our rectangle tool. Make sure that we don't have any layers selected, because we don't want to be creating a new layer. We do want to make sure we want to create a new layer. So that's why we're making sure that we don't have anything selected. And we're going to just draw a rectangle. It's similar to this building, about like that. And then let's go to our text, and for our transform properties, so just drop down this little drop down, and we're just going to select the transform and hit Control C, and that will copy all the properties that are there. Then we'll go to our shape layer, and we're going to make sure that it is a 3D layer. So you might need to toggle these switches so that you can see this icon here. Let's create a 3D layer for that, and then Control B. And that will then paste all the properties for that text right into that shape layer. But you can see that that shape layer is pretty big. So let's go ahead and scale that down. So hit S, and we're going to scale down that layer. A pretty good deal. About like that. And then we're going to drag this shape layer over. So we'll get our select tool. We'll just drag this over to the right. About like that. And then maybe a little bit more. And then we're going to bring it forward just a little. Because remember, we actually pushed that text back in Z space. So about like that. And then maybe we need to scale it down even more. Let's see here. And then we can just drag. What we're going to do is make sure that it's about the same size as our building. About like that. That's really close. Then we can just scale it up just a little bit more and bring it back over. There we go. Awesome. Okay. So what we want now is to kind of scroll forward and make sure that that is staying lined up with that building. And it is for the most part. It does get off just a little bit. Looks like we need to bring it forward in Z space. About like that. Okay, so now it's back up. Go forward. Looks like we're pretty lined up. So now we can do something awesome. So now that we have this layer here, this shape layer, let's go ahead and rename it. Call it our shadow. And we're going to allow it to cast a shadow on that text. So let's go ahead and go to our material options. Cast shadows, we're going to turn that on. And when we do that, you can see that it's now casting a shadow on this text. But you can see that it stops here at the top. So there's something that we need to do. What we can do is we can actually extrude this layer. So let's go ahead and go to our material options for this layer, for our geometry options, and let's extrude it. We're just extrude it to where it's about the same width as this building. So when we come overhead, if we take that extrusion depth down, you can see about how wide that needs to be. So we just kind of come through. Then you can see now that we have the shadow that looks like it's casting right onto this text. But what if we wanted that to not be showing up, but just to cast that shadow? We can actually go to our material options, and instead of cast shadows on, we can click it another time and it's only going to cast a shadow. So that is pretty awesome. So now not only is it extruded and it's casting a shadow, but now we don't even have to look at it. So we're going to go ahead and stop there. And now that we have this shadow that's being cast